A football club might be generating a lot of money, it could even be making profits, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's sustainable. There's a commonly used phrase in the world of finance: revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is reality. So perhaps we need to look at something else in relation to the way the club generates and spends cash, and that's what we refer to as a cash flow statement. So let's take a look at a couple of case studies relating to equity. So we're going to start off by looking at Spurs. So here we have the accounts of Tottenham Hotspur Limited. And if we go to the balance sheet and focus on the equity element, what we see is equity split into the two parts that we've already discussed. So as far as what happens if you've spent a lot of money on a football player and the player either has a significant injury which curtails or significantly reduces their ability to play, or simply turns out to be rather poor? Here we're going to apply something called impairment. And the way
when do you impair a player? And does it ever work in reverse?
It does, and it's funny you mention that actually, because we're actually having our audit right now, and impairment's obviously a topic, and we spoke about it yesterday with the auditors, because obviously it's something that is a key audit risk, to be honest.
The Premier League is incredibly successful. Clubs such as Manchester United and Chelsea and Liverpool are global brands in their own right, and therefore they generate huge broadcasting numbers, both domestically and overseas. But as we drop through the divisions, the interest in football from a viewing perspective declines quite sharply. In order to address this, and in order to try to make the Premier League a bit more competitive, we have what's known as parachute payments. Now, the nature of... So we've been through the player life cycle, but what happens when the two parties decide to separate? What happens when a club sells a player's registration? Well, as far as the income statement is concerned, we register a profit or loss at the date of sale. And that profit or loss is calculated as the difference between the sale price of the registration certificate and the book value. So remember the book value. There's been a lot of criticism of the present formation of financial fair play. And as a result of that, in 2022, UEFA put together proposals to change the way that cost controls operate. So we're going to move away from financial fair play towards financial sustainability. And under the most important assets in the eyes of many, as far as a football club are concerned, are the football players themselves. So we do have some specific ratios which have been tailored to the football industry. And this shows us what is the club's strategy in terms of, is it trying to improve its player recruitment by spending more money? So for example, if we have spent 300 on players and our amortisation charge is 150, this would give us a player reinvestment rate of 2 or 200%. And if your player reinvestment rate is 1 or falls below 1, this indicates a club that's perhaps cutting back. You would normally expect this ratio to be higher than 1 simply because we know that there is inflation in. Another ratio we can look with regards to players is what we refer to as the squad aging ratio. And here we take our accumulated amortisation charge and we compare that to the total cost of the squad. And this tells us just how far through contracts the club is. So if we've got a club that has spent 100 million on players, but the amortisation charge is 80, we would take 80 divided by 100. This gives us a figure of 0.8 or 80%, which is saying on average, players are 80% of the way through their contracts. If we take a look at the majority of clubs in the Premier League, they normally have a squad ageing ratio of between, say, 50 to 60%. So if you... In this section of the course, we're going to look at football club valuation. It could be that you're thinking of buying a football club, acquiring control of it, or perhaps buying a strategic minority stake in the club, and you want to know how much to pay. Or you could be on the sell side of the equation and you want to know how much to ask for. It could. Historically, Barcelona has always been very successful, it's been very profitable, but that changed. And one of the big drivers of that change was COVID. First of all, Barcelona made a loss of €133 million in 2020.